Hey, this is Henry. I'm going to take you through a Rhino um, template that I set up to help with this assignment and show a few quick things about workflow. So this is the template. If you look in the layer structure, I've set up some default layers for 2D drawing, some default layers for 3D modeling, and under extra, a whole bunch of layers for setting up the file. And that's what I want to concentrate on right now. I also want to draw your attention to, I've made this little thing, this little 3D, it's actually circles in, a top, front, and left view. And I use this because I like to establish a 0, 0 point for the file, for the building, and then use it to reference all the drawings in the model. And I think that'll become clear if I show you how this works, but it affords a very precise way of working. So, if I were going to be doing, building a model of this building, which we found on ArcDaily, and I think all of your projects are on ArcDaily as well. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and, find all the plans and download them and then bring them into the Rhino model as an underlay. And here's how I do that. I'm sure there's other ways, but I do it this way, is if you right click and you say copy image, and I'm going to open up my ancient Photoshop here, which probably looks different than yours because mine is really old. And if you do Control N, if you've copied it, the default file will already be the right size. Just to make life easier, I'm going to just scale it up so it's something that's a little bit more memorable. And I've noticed that if you make it 2000 wide, it'll be 2000 by 1200, and I think that's great. And then the other thing that I really like to do when I'm doing this is just do a Control I and invert it, because I find that that's like nicer on my eyes when I'm tracing, and then save it as PNG, right? And you can see that I've already done this for all the drawings for this project. And the thing that's really important to remember is that it's 2,000 pixels wide by 1,200 pixels tall. Um, so what that means when we go back to Rhino, now here I have, I'm going to type units. I've set up my units to work in meters to start out with because the drawings are scaled to meters. And if you want to, do that, I think that's fine. I think that's going to help at least with the process of getting the drawings in and all to the same scale. If you want to do that and then convert it to feet and inches, that's fine as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to make a rectangle that's 2,000 meters by 1,200 meters, um, and make it a planar surface. Okay, there's probably an easier way to do that, but that's the way I've always done it. And I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call it plan ground, and I'm going to put that on the plan ground layer. Um, and then the next thing I do is making sure you're in the shaded view. If you go to the viewport properties, this is super important. Um, where'd my viewport properties go? Actually, that's not what I want. I want display options. Under shaded here, and under color and material usage, the default is set to, I think, object color. Make it rendering material. And then go ahead and do the same for X-ray mode. That's super important. Uh, and so now when this is on layer plan ground, make sure that it's getting its display color by layer. and then come over here and click on the little material thing for the layer and set the type to be custom and set the color, say assign texture, and then find your PNG that you saved. And remember, it's 2000 pixels across by 1200 up and down. This is a 2000 by 1200 rectangle. And when you do that, you end up with, uh, a plane that has your image as an underlay. And the next thing you need to do is you need to make sure it's scaled properly. So here's how I do that. So I'm just going to draw a line. And I'm going to copy it over. You can see our graphic scale says 5 meters. So I'm going to copy it over 5 meters. And that's where that line should be. And then I'm going to copy a line to be right there. And then I'm going to draw like this. And now I'm going to click on my plane. I'm going to say scale. And it's going to say, base point. And then the first reference point is kind of where it is. And the second reference point is where you want it to be, right? When you do that, right, it scales it based on your graphic scale. You can measure, and you can see that that's 5 meters, right? And now this is all scaled, right? And the rest of it's to scale. And then you can go ahead and you can do that for the rest of your drawings. And if you open up the template file that I sent, you can see here an underlay um, that yeah, you can see here an underlay that I've already done that for all of these drawings. And the next thing I did after I did that is I basically decided on a place that would be, well, first of all, I arranged them all so they are, I think, like, an even number distance apart. Thought that was 50 meters. That's odd. It's, yeah, 50, somehow this, because this one's a section. These are, that should be 50 meters. In fact, let's do that now. Let's just, so these are all 50 meters and then 100 meters that way. I decided on an origin point and I put this little thing in the same place in every file. Um, and I put it in a place that I'm going to use it in my model. And in addition to that, what I've done is um, I've taken the sections, or at least one of the sections in one of the elevations, and I've oriented them spatially, in a way that lines up with the right orientation in 3D space. I flipped them up. I moved this one into a front view, and I moved this one. I changed it from right to left the screen. I made it a left view. And because everything is registered, right? It means that you can start to do things like um, trace and then copy. And the reason why this is important is because if you look at this um, this project, let's see if we get some of the photographs, right? It's like fairly formally complex. Let's see, let's close that. right? Like there's sort of a lot going on. It's not a simple extrusion, and like the floor plates don't necessarily line up. So what we're going to do to start out with is I'm going to start out by crafting a massing. And you can see that I've already done that. I've started to mass out, right? Like there's that central volume, which is right, like I think that's, this volume. There's that big wall, which we've got that big wall. Um, but let's get like that front volume. So here's how I would start to just sort of mass that out is um, I started to create these guidelines, right? And I just sort of trace off the plan. And one of the things that I think is really good to do is you draw a line and to sort of move them in even increments instead of just tracing. So it's like instead of being, 2.23451 meters, it's, 2.2 meters or whatever. And, because these are all lined up and because they're all 50 meters apart, you can also see, like, you can copy these grid lines up 50 meters and see, how they register on the next plan, right? You can see there that they're starting to line up, right? So what I've done here, or what I'm going to do here, right, is let's just make, and I'm going to do this on the, I'm going to be on the 3D wall here, 3D wall layer, right? And so I've got my curve. Oops, it's not my curve. Where is it? There we go. My curve. You can see I sort of, yeah, all right. I'm snapped to the right one. And then I'm just going to move it based on my little origin point thing here and move it over here. And I know that it's registering because that little origin marker that I made sort of keeps everything registered, right? And then I can extrude it, right? How tall is it? Well, you can see here looking in this section that, there's something happening where we're not getting the full width of the volume, at the top floor. So one way we could deal with that, we could do move face. It's a command I like all a lot. And we could move that out, and it looks like it aligns with where this wall is. All right, so let's do that. Let's just align it. It's to shaded. So what's going on there? Let's set that to wireframe. Move face. All right, move face is a way of working with solid objects. There we go. Okay. All right. So that seems to line up. I'm going to set that back to X-ray. All right. But you can see what's happening is it looks like the form is only at that, that sort of face for a while, and then it kind of kicks back. Right. I think you can see that. Right. You see that right here. Here at this floor, it's aligned with the wall, and then when it goes down, it kicks back, but only for part. Right. So let's see where is that line? Well, we could look at, a different floor plan, see if we can find that. Let's see. All right, so it looks like that line is like right there, right there. Um, so and let's sort of copy. Let's try 3 meters, and then let's go 0.2 meters, 0.1 meter. Okay, that seems pretty good. All right. So again, we can do this trick where we're going to copy that guideline from one of those little origin markers to the next, right? Okay, so that's the place where our form is gonna kick back, right? And then what's the profile? Well, you can see in this section that we lined up, right? That's this section, right? Right here, that's the line that's talking about the profile of the building over here. So let's just trace that. We'll do it, do a little roughly. I'm going to turn off ortho, F8, right? And then come back here. I'm going to turn ortho back on. And I'm going to say, oops, fillet. It's a way of like making that corner. Right? Select these two things, join them. So now I have this one curve, right? Um, that one curve is right here, and I'm going to move it. I'm going to move it over there, right? And this is one of my favorite commands ever. Everybody has their favorite Rhino command. One of mine is wirecut, and I'm going to select this object, and then I'm gonna. So what it's doing, you can see over here, right? Is I'm pulling that wire, and I'm going to stop right there, and then you can see right here, I drag this way, and it's just going to cut away part of my form, right? So what I've done there, oops, right, is I've made that that little move was the beginning of it. And then, the question is like, what happens on the other side? Well, what happens on the other side, you can see is it looks like it's also in this section, and I've already drawn that, right? That's this line, it kicks back, right? So we can do the same thing. We can say wire cut this, then we're going to go snap to the end of that line there, right? Pull that off. It's going to say, is this the part you want to throw away? We say yes, right? And now you can see, right, we started to just mass out this really complex form. And what's kind of cool is when you look, I also set up this elevation. And when we look in X-ray in the left view, right, you can see that it's already kind of starting to line up with the elevation, the way it's drawn. So this is a really great way of working, I find, because it does a number of things. One is it allows you to really understand the form in a three-dimensional way, especially when it's got a complex section. And then two is it allows you to start to think about the drawings and the model as all being sort of referenced to one another in a very, very precise way. And so since, we have this origin point that we keep track of, you can start to build your model off of the uh, the images of drawings that you brought in, but then you can also start to use some of the guides you set up to trace those images in ways that are not just about making one plan, but about making all the plans, or not about making one section, but making all the sections and making the model too. And if you start to be diligent about, keeping things on the appropriate layers, I like to set up a layer called Scratch where I'm just sort of, working on these guidelines, and then, start by massing it out on a layer called Wall. But then eventually what we're going to do is, you can hollow out the center and start to turn those solid blocks, into walls. Um, as a next step. But being able to start out with a massing, I find is a really, really good workflow. And it's one that I would encourage you all to do as a way of really getting into these precedent studies.